As an intern, there are certifications like, for example, AIPC is one of them. So I do really advertise that to the interns and say, before you apply for these infection prevention positions, this may be something to consider doing. And then you could do it at the end of your internship after you go through the 10 weeks.
Infection stops where information starts. Welcome to the Transmission Control Podcast, where knowledge is your strongest defense. Broadcasting from the front lines of healthcare, we dive into the strategies, science, and stories shaping infection prevention today. Each episode, we connect you with experts on real-world insights to help you stop the spread of healthcare-associated infections, protect patients, and strengthen your practices as an infection prevention and public health expert. When the right information reaches the right people, lives are saved.
Hello and welcome to the Transmission Control Podcast. Today we're talking with Paul Gentile about internship programs for infection preventionists that are not only going to teach you the technical skills you need to know, but are going to give you real-world, boots-on-the-ground experience that are going to keep your patients safer and really prepare you for a successful career in IP. We'll be right back after a brief word from our sponsors.
Brought to you from the studios of Healthcare HQ, let's get into it. This is Transmission Control.
Hello and welcome to the Transmission Control Podcast. My name is Garrett Hollenbeek, Editor-in-Chief of Transmission Control, and I'm joined by our co-host, Jill Holdsworth. Jill, how are you today?
Hey, Garrett. I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you. And this one's kind of funny because we're always moving around and IP is like always on the road. This time I'm in like a library basement to do this podcast recording. So this episode's sponsored by the Gordon Avenue Library in Charlottesville, Virginia.
It's a great testament to infection control is everywhere and anywhere. It doesn't matter if you're moving around.
That is true. And I'm excited to talk with our guest today. Today we're going to be talking about really the road into infection prevention and a path that is not always clear to very many people. It's challenging to come into this field without working in IP before, but then how do you get started? So we're going to be talking with Paul Gentile today about an infection prevention internship program and learn more about the victory laps associated with that program. So Paul, welcome to.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for having me. And like you mentioned, I am in my basement as well. And again, I'm in Connecticut, so it's like 38 degrees here. But infection prevention is everywhere. So I'm happy to be here with you guys.
Yeah. And for those that don't know you and aren't familiar with your work, can you tell us a little bit about your career and your journey in infection prevention?
Absolutely. And I'll give a high-level overview of it because I definitely have an interesting journey. But my background is in public health, but I actually have a nurse technician trade background as well. That's what inspired me to learn more about infection prevention. I had a situation where I worked in a nursing home and we were exposed to scabies. And I was like, well, what is scabies? And I decided that okay, sounds pretty interesting. Who's our infection control person here? And that's when I was able to shadow somebody in infection prevention, one person that held many hats. And that's kind of where I started my journey. And I ended up going into continuing doing like nurse technician work, worked in the acute care setting. I worked in ambulatory, I've worked in the hospital settings, long-term care and hospice. And when I got my public health degree, I knew that was a track I could take to get into infection prevention. In addition, with my clinical background as well as a tech, But then after that, I became a infection preventionist at a small acute care hospital, and then later went into a large academic center and worked with Jill in the past. And learned a lot from her as well. And then I was able to, once I got that experience, I was able to really expand that knowledge. And now I'm trying to share that with others that are interested in coming into the field.
And Paul, just going back to what you said about how you were able to shadow somebody early on when you were interested, how do you feel like that has impacted the way that you think about how others need that kind of experience and leading into the work you've done on this program we're going to talk about?
Yeah, so I think the shadowing experience is very important. That was how I was introduced to infection control and prevention, or I like to call it infection prevention because we always like to prevent infections. We don't want to get to the controlling piece if we don't have to. But I really think that, it's very important to shadow because that is also a part of mentorship and also learning about the foundational components of infection prevention. And when I did have that opportunity to shadow and see some of the things that were being done, I had a lot of questions. And I think that's also what sparked my interest because there was so much to infection prevention. It's such a dynamic field. And I was only able to see a part of it from a long-term care perspective. But I knew that when I did my research, I was like, oh my gosh, there's more to this. It's beyond like long-term care. So I think that was very important to have that shadowing opportunity because it just opened up more avenues for me.
I think that's great for IPs on the line that are listening to know that shadowing is always an option. You don't have to have someone come in for a 200-hour internship. If somebody just wants to see what IP is all about, shadowing is the perfect first option. We've had people that shadow and then they come to work for us. And so shadowing is kind of like that first step if somebody isn't ready to commit. And so I love that that's how you started out too, with a good shadowing experience, because that can honestly make or break it for somebody. They can either say, wow, this is really cool, I want to do this, or they can say, this job is terrible and boring, and which hopefully would never say that. They must have had a really bad experience if so. But yeah, I think that the shadowing is kind of like that first step.
Yeah, you're not joking about that. And really seeing what IP does on a day-to-day basis is important getting into the career. It's also important as part of the interview process. One of the things we've seen go really well is when somebody's interviewing and they've gotten through kind of the first stage or two is they'll spend a day with us on site and just tour the facility. They'll walk around with us and they get to see kind of a day in the life. And we've had some really like that and say, this is exactly where I want to be. And even on the other side of it, when they say, this is not for me, this is either too much patient interaction or not enough patient interaction or whatever the unique piece of it is. But once they see it, then they know they're kind of informed on what the role is going to look like.
Absolutely. I think, when you give them that opportunity to get that foundational understanding, you're setting like a precedence in a way of just saying, this is kind of what the field is like. And this is stuff that you may expect, but there's also going to be other things that you may come across in your day-to-day activities. Every day is a different day, I feel like, in the field of infection prevention. So I think it's very important for them to get that exposure.
Absolutely. So you run an internship program, and tell us a little bit about what that internship looks like and how that got started.
Absolutely. So the internship program is actually based off APIC's competency model and also the accelerated internship program guide that they actually have created for public for students and interns to use when they're interested in pursuing a potential career in infection prevention. So the internship program that I created was based off of that guide, and I felt that guide was really helpful because it applies clinical application skills, and that is one thing that I hear a lot of times from students and interns that are not even in the academic field. They are always looking for that clinical application piece or that IP experience, and I feel that that guide really helps guide them in terms of how to get that experience. And it's a 10-week internship program, but with my internship program that I have running, it's typically, we try to modify it and cater to the student or the intern schedule. And it's typically 20 hours a week, but if they have classes and things like that, we can reschedule and try to move things around. Sometimes they'll spend beyond 20 weeks because we know in infection prevention, 20 hours is not enough. So it can go beyond that. And I think that's the minimum requirement that we expect of the interns. But if they are interested in learning more, and if there's things going on, we always encourage them to still stick around and get that experience. But it is a 10-week program, and we do offer it to students that are enrolled in academic programs that are interested in pursuing a career or just learning more about infection prevention, and giving them that opportunity to kind of get an understanding of just the foundational components of infection prevention and some of the work we do.
So, Paul, how do you source these interns? I know you said you offer it to certain groups in courses and whatnot, but how do you get the word out? How do they find you, and how do you find them?
Yeah, so a lot of it started with social media, and actually some of these students have actually reached out to me personally, whether it's through the social media or a career board. They may have a career board with their college or university, so that where they post paid and unpaid internships, and that's where I try to get the message out saying, hey, we have this infection prevention internship program. If you're interested in going down this track, please feel free to reach out to me. But a lot of it I've had is by word of mouth. So when you had one student reach out and they've gone through the internship program, it definitely spreads. And they tell their other colleagues that are in their programs, and they will say, oh, there's this infection prevention internship program. If you're interested in pursuing a career in IP, this may be something that you could try and see if this is something that you would want to do. And I think so far with the internship program, we've had about, I would say, around 10 to 12 students already have gone through this. And it's not just from one program at one university. We're trying to spread the awareness throughout the community in our surrounding area. So we work with advisors as well with these programs, and the advisors also reach out to their students that are enrolled in their programs to let them know that there's an internship program that exists like this if you're interested. So that's really how it started. It really started through reaching out through career boards and talking to advisors of different schools and programs, and also to students that have reached out personally through social media.
That's amazing. I mean, and it's such a necessary thing because nobody goes to school for IP necessarily. You're coming from a diverse educational background, you're coming from the workplace, or just, somebody stumbled across it, got scabies, and then said, hey, I need to learn more about this field. So what need does an internship like this address in the larger IP industry?
So I think one of the biggest things about the internship program is that it allows the students or the interns to actually have that side-by-side conversation and also the dialogue with an actual infection preventionist. I think that's really important for them to have during their internship program. And they also get the opportunity throughout the internship program to assist with surveillance. They actually go on environment of care rounds. They are able to not only shadow with infection preventionists, but they're able to go into other ancillary departments and see how infection preventionists work with different people of different levels of expertise in healthcare. And I think that's something that you're not always going to get in the classroom and reading the text. You have to actually be able to see that in person, on the grounds. And I think with the internship program, even though it's the 10-week time period, they're able to see all of these things. I have a schedule that I put together for them based off of the internship program guide. And if they have to go to CSS, or Central Sterile Processing, or if they need to meet with emergency preparedness, or if I would like them to go to the EVS, environmental services town halls. Those are things that we can put into the schedule because those are things that we want to make sure that infection preventionists and the students understand that we have a relationship with these individuals and they help us with our work. So I think it's very important to make sure that they have that exposure, and that's what's really beneficial about the internship program. It gives them that IP experience they need.
I think that you really hit the nail on the head with how we can all be very beneficial with these programs, because I have interviewed many people that said I had an internship or I shadowed, whatever you want to say. But when you ask them what they actually did, they might say, I sat and watched the IP put in data or do surveillance. And to me, that's like, you can't just say, I had an internship and all of a sudden you're much more employable. You have to be able to actually explain what you did during that internship. That's going to make you a better IP coming in entry level. And the program that you've designed is doing just that. They're not just sitting there watching the IP work. They're actually out there. They're doing things. They're hands-on. And I think that is probably the best part about what you've developed here.
Absolutely. I think it's boots on the ground with infection prevention. So if they really want to get the experience, that's the best way to do it, because a lot of employers are looking for infection preventionists that have infection prevention experience. And I think, going through this internship program, that's something that I can provide to them and give them that experience. And being a part of a very large acute care system and being involved with all these different departments and ancillary areas, it also helps the infection preventionists to provide resources and also establish relationships with that department. Because you never know, these interns, they may find a interest in sterile processing or in environmental services or facilities and design. But I really think it's important that the clinical application piece is being done, because a lot of the times, like you said, Jill, when we interview candidates, they are interested in infection prevention, but they may have not done the clinical application piece, and they're just well, I don't know how to get that experience. So I think that's something that this program can offer to them.
Have you seen where somebody starts the internship program and there's kind of a transformative moment where they're looking at ceiling tiles and you realize that they're seeing things through kind of an IP lens? They're adapting this new set of skills to keep patients safe.
Absolutely. I think with the internship program, when I have the interns do environment of care rounds, it's not the infection preventionist that will do it. I will actually have them do it. And the infection preventionist will be with them. And I'll have them take the audit sheet and I'll ask them, I want you to do this audit sheet, but I also want you to look beyond the audit sheet. I want you to use your infection prevention lens and see what other things you have questions about, and we can have a discussion about it. So ceiling tiles are one of them if they're stained, or if instruments aren't pre-cleaned in the soiled utility room. Are the airborne isolation rooms negative pressure? Those are the things that I want them to make sure they understand. Are glucometers cleaned appropriately and contact time being followed? Those are things that these interns are getting exposure to and asking questions. And it also gives them the opportunity to interact with staff as well, because a lot of students, they come from non-clinical backgrounds, so they never have that experience actually speaking with a nurse or a provider or a healthcare worker. And so this internship program gives them that opportunity to establish relationships and how to communicate with individuals in this type of field.
And that was going to be my next question. So in addition to the technical skills that they're learning, what are some of the soft skills that you've seen the internship groups pick up during this 10-week period?
So I think at the end of throughout the internship program, I think one of the things with interns is that they are new and they are exploring the field. So I think at first there is some hesitancy, but there is interest. But as they get more exposure to rounding and to interacting with different individuals, I've noticed that, they have more dialogue towards the end, and then they have more questions too along the way. And I always welcome questions from my interns, because I think there's no bad question and there's so much to learn in this field. But I feel like at the end of the internship program, they have a really good foundational understanding of what infection prevention is and what are the next steps that they need to take if they're going to be graduating and they're going to be potentially applying for an infection preventionist job. They will know what are the requirements and the skills needed for that role at the end of that internship, which would make them a better candidate when they are applying for jobs.
Paul, I have a question about certification. Are you seeing that interns are already thinking about becoming IP certified? Do they learn what that even means from you? Or how do you suggest to other people when to introduce the idea of certification to these folks that are brand new?
So I introduce it to them right away. That's usually within the first 2 weeks of the internship program, because I think certification is very important. It's a part of our APIC competency model, and that is something that they read about as well, and they also learn about the different certifications that are out there, not only in infection prevention, but also in just healthcare quality in general. But as an infection preventionist, I feel very strongly that it's important to become board certified, but I do let them know that as an intern, there are certifications like, for example, AIPC is one of them. So I do really advertise that to the interns and say, before you apply for these infection prevention positions, this may be something to consider doing. And then you could do it at the end of your internship after you go through the 10 weeks. And if you have questions about the readings and some of the clinical application skills that you're learning during the internship program, a lot of these things are fair game that you may see on your AIPC exam. And I think once they get that certification and they apply for jobs in infection prevention, I think, and I've had students tell me this, some of the employers are not even aware that the certification exists, but it also shows to the employer too, because now that student or postgraduate intern is actually teaching the employer about this new certification. So it actually shows that, they're not only invested in becoming a board certified infection preventionist, but they also are staying up to date with their professional development activities, which an infection preventionist should do. So I really think that, I'm highly encouraging, my interns. I've had several interns actually become AIPC certified post their internship program. And I know several of them have actually gotten infection preventionist positions because of that. So that was a big piece in addition to the clinical experience that they were receiving with the internship program.
That's fantastic to have advocates for certification like that in you. We need more people like you out there teaching people about these certifications. That's exactly why the AIPC exists. So that's perfect.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a great differentiator too. If it's something where you're applying for this role and you just need that extra little thing to sparkle on your resume, that AIPC can be a big piece of that. Or you're coming in from a related field where it's an easier barrier to entry if you're coming from lab or sterile processing. To say, I have an interest in this field, and you've kind of got some skin in the game to accomplish that. Now, one of the things that's come up on previous episodes this season and last season is just that workforce reliability. So it sounds like going through this internship kind of produces a better prepared IP to start on day one.
Yeah, I agree. I think on day one of just this accelerated internship program, it's already introducing them to the foundation of infection prevention. And that's really where they need to start, is just kind of understanding the different domains of our APIC competency model and how to become a proficient and expert level infection preventionist. But the internship, again, gives a foundational understanding. So they're not going to learn everything in the 10 weeks, but at least they'll know what to expect if something comes up when they are on the actual job if they are employed as an IP in the future. So nothing would be like a surprise per se. It would, but because it will be covered in the internship program. But we may not go into every little bit of detail, but they would be reading about it because we want them to live the real life experience of the infection prevention department. So.
Absolutely. I'm sure that gives a sigh of relief to IP managers out there when they bring somebody new on. Because I know my first month at least, just every day I had questions that I was writing down, like things to Google, things to ask my boss, things that I probably should know about. I mean, I had this little cheat sheet of what's a PIC line? What's a CVC? What's an HD line? And why do they call it this sometimes? And then and these are some of the questions that you feel a little silly asking because you're like, oh, I should know this. But it's really not native to anybody. Nobody knows this without somebody kind of like you're saying, going through both the technical piece of it, the textbook piece, and then also those clinical skills.
Yeah, and it's great you actually brought up, as an example, just the indwelling urinary catheters and central lines, because I have students that, they may not come from a clinical background, and they had no idea, what a central line insertion is like or what a Foley insertion is like. So we actually have them participate in, sim labs and then also go and shadow an interventional radiology to see how they do a central line insertion and have the circulating nurse or the tech that's in the room or the provider actually explain that process. And they have the checklist, too. Because, again, you can read it on paper, but until you actually see it in practice, it's different. And I think that's one of the benefits of having an internship program like that, because interns don't always see those things, the academia, in the classroom. They have to come and see that in the internship program.
Well, and to be honest, a lot of us had never seen any of that stuff before we became IPs. So what a cool thing that they're getting to do this kind of stuff during their internship, because they'll start as an IP and they'll have already done some of those things that those of us who started from other walks of life, we hadn't seen any of that either. And so it's such a benefit to already have some of that under your belt when you start as an IP. So that's really fantastic that they're getting that experience. Now, Paul, I have another question. This is more about you. How much time do you have to dedicate to something like this when you're the one leading it or you're in charge of the intern? How much of a burden is this on your time management?
So in terms of time management, I must say it's very important when you're developing the internship program. You have to understand and kind of test with your day-to-day activities. You also have to balance that and also understand what your intern's needs are too, because every intern comes in with different backgrounds and they may have strengths and weaknesses too. So I think one of the beneficial things about my internship program is that I work with the ancillary departments. I can't give a time frame per se of how much time I spend within the 40 hours a week, because my interns, it varies depending on their schedules. But one of the benefits of the internship program is because we are one of many hats in different disciplines, like I mentioned with sterile processing, environment of care, construction. With my internship program, I actually work with these different departments. So the interns are not always with me side by side. I have them going to meet with the emergency preparedness coordinator, or I'll have them go and meet with regulatory accreditation and do rounds. So a lot of the times that helps because I'm working with these ancillary departments, so they actually support the program because it's also giving them the opportunity for a student to learn about their department as well. And they take the students sometimes away, so then I can actually do my day-to-day activity. Because you're right, it's a big part because there's a high demand right now, and a lot of infection prevention departments are understaffed. Thankfully, I have a team of infection preventionists that come from different backgrounds. So when we talk about lab or microbiology, I have lab techs that are infection preventionists, and I think that's very helpful too. So I'll always pair them up with another infection preventionist. But I also have an associate. I always recommend having an associate preceptor with your internship program, just so at least the work can be balanced. And if you get busy or if something comes up, that's something that you can always lean back on and say, hey, so-and-so is going to be here today. Do you mind just covering and making sure that they go to these areas? But in the end, one of the expectations I hold for all the interns is that, they get the schedule, but as interns in the department, they are expected to follow that schedule, and they're responsible to keep track of what's on that schedule. And if there's things that they're unable to accomplish, or if they have more questions on, or if they need more exposure to, that's when I encourage them to reach out to myself or the associate preceptor. But in the end, one of the things I want to make sure that they're doing is being advocates for themselves, and also making sure to reach out and ask questions, because that's the whole point of the internship program. Is I need them to get the experience, but they also need to take responsibility upon themselves too. So that's important because we are very busy as well.
So it's almost practicing that skill of self-advocacy as well in the middle of all this. And that's hugely important for IPs. Looking ahead to the future state, would you like to see more internship programs like this? Is this program scalable for all prospective IPs to go through?
I would love to see more internship programs available because like I mentioned, I have so many students that, are interested in coming into the field of infection prevention. But with infection prevention internship programs, we also have to make sure there's a balance with our staffing and making sure the resources are available. But I would love to see more infection prevention internship programs across the country. I know there are academic institutions that are combining that with there's a bunch of IPC degrees that are out there now, and they're looking into how to apply internship programs as a part of their practicum experience, or just overall internship experience. But I think it will vary depending on the institution, what resources they have available. I think the internship program guide, though, that was developed by APIC is definitely beneficial, and it can be tailored to the needs, too, of the infection prevention department. But again, I think there definitely needs to be more internship programs out there. I feel like right now there aren't enough, but there are a lot of people that are interested, but employers are looking for that experience. So if we can get these new IPs that are wanting to get experience, the internship programs are the way to go. And they don't need to be, our internship program is unpaid. But again, a lot of internship programs too can be paid for, but they also can be tied to credits for the students if they're enrolled in an academic program. So I definitely think, if IPs partner, if they have local or community institutions that they can partner with, that's another way of trying to get people the IP experience they need. So definitely think there's definitely more room for that.
And I think that's a great point, too, that you mentioned that it's not always or usually a paid internship. And a lot of times they're doing this as part of their graduate school or their required hours that they have to, because I've heard a lot of people say I wanted to do an internship program, but it wasn't funded. But a lot of times the only financial burden is the time it takes for the IPs to have an intern. So if anybody's listening and wondering how they can get started, it really doesn't have to be that complicated just to get started.
Absolutely. And again, the internship program at minimum is 20 hours a week. So, and you'll realize too, you'll have your intern come to your facility and they may be shadowing how you do your surveillance, but give them tasks to do with your oversight and it'll actually help you. Sometimes if you need educational material created on tuberculosis education, that can be, if the student is enrolled in a program that requires a deliverable, that can be a project they can work on, but it'll also benefit the infection prevention department because that's something that they can review, and then that was something that they got as a deliverable for their course or program. So it works in both ways. So you kind of have to find a balance with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, we are about out of time. Paul, I do want to just say congratulations on such an amazing program, and I'm hoping that those listening find ways to create their own internship program. Because like you said, the need is there. The people are there who want to get the experience. We just need some additional leaders, just like Paul, out there who are willing to put the time and effort into an internship program. So I want to thank you so much for being here, Paul, and sharing this story.
And thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And if there's ever any questions, I always have my email and everything. You can always feel free to reach out to me.
Well, that was so much fun. Paul is one of my favorite people, so I loved having him on this podcast. And I really loved talking about how beneficial these internships can be to making somebody very employable, very attractive on their resume. And not just to say that they did an internship, but really to have that substance, that hands-on experience that Paul and his colleagues are giving these interns.
Yeah, it's part of that workforce development theme that seems to have come up a couple times on this season, that IPs, you have to come into it prepared, and internships like this are a great way to do that. It's one of those opportunities that I was happy to hear his perspective there at the end of the episode, that these are scalable programs. This could be part of every IP's career journey, is to have a high quality internship like this. And that's important, to have a high quality internship like this. We want to thank everybody who listened to the podcast today, and join us for the rest of season 3, because remember, infection stops where information starts.
Thanks for tuning in to the Transmission Control Podcast, where infection stops because information starts. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know. Connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to leave a 5-star rating and share this episode with your team. Until next time, stay informed, stay vigilant, and keep transmission under control.